Hello and welcome to Daily Reflection with Aneel Aranha. Today is the 10th of December, 2018. We're going to reflect on Luke 5:17 to 26. One day when Jesus was teaching, Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting nearby. They had come from every village of Galilee and Judea and from Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was with him to heal. Just then some men came carrying a paralyzed man on a bed. They were trying to bring him in and lay him before Jesus. But finding no way to bring him in because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and let him down with his bed through the tiles into the middle of the crowd in front of Jesus. When he saw their faith, he said, "Friend, your sins are forgiven you." Then the scribes and the Pharisees began to question, "Who is this who is speaking blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" When Jesus perceived their questionings, he answered them, "Why do you raise such questions in your hearts? Which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven you,' or to say, 'Stand up and walk'? But so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." He said to the one who was paralyzed, "I say to you, stand up and take your bed and go to your home." Immediately he stood up before them, took what he had been lying on, and went to his home, glorifying God. Amazement seized all of them, and they glorified God and were filled with awe, saying, "We have seen strange things today." The gospel of the Lord. And this is such a strange story. Are you a visual person? I hope that you are, because this is a very funny story if you can imagine the looks on everybody's face. Being a preacher, the first person who comes to mind is Jesus. Picture this. He is preaching to a packed room filled with people when suddenly debris starts to fall from the sky. He looks up and he sees clumps of mud coming down, dirtying his clean white robe, and then he realizes he has lost his entire audience, who is staring with open mouths at the drama unfolding over their heads. Can you imagine the look on Peter's face? It was probably his house that Jesus was using as his temporary residence, and I don't think he would have been very amused, but he surely would have looked very comical as he watched a hole being systematically made in his ceiling. It would have had to have been at least 6 feet by 2 feet to pass a stretcher through. Now, can you imagine the look on the man on the stretcher? He was probably terrified he was going to be dropped. Bad enough he's paralyzed, he's now at risk of breaking some bones in his body too. For him, the whole episode, from the time his friends have come to get him up to this point, has been an exercise in comic terror. Anyway, he is lowered to the room without incident, and then Jesus tells the guy that his sins are forgiven. Now, can you imagine the look on the faces of the 4 men who had just lowered their friend into the room? They had gone to all the trouble to get their friend to Jesus to be healed, and Jesus was forgiving him his sins. And if their eyes became round with amazement, the eyes of the Pharisees would have narrowed in fury at what they considered blasphemy. But then Jesus ends the comedy as he says, "Which is easier, to say your sins are forgiven you, or to say stand up and walk? But that so that you may know who it is who stands in front of you, watch this." He then turns to the paralyzed man and says, "Stand up and go home." And the man stands up to what is probably a huge ovation, and then he goes home. Now, for your reflection, put yourself in each person's shoes and see how you would act or react to the situations unfolding in this story. And you will find this exercise simply amazing and very insightful. I promise you that. God bless you.